Welcome to the show. I'm Jason Whitlock, and I'll tell you why Coach K and Duke just got a rude awakening.
And I'm Colin Cowherd on a Monday, and I'll tell you why the Warriors could be in real trouble. Speak for yourself. Starts right now on a Monday. We had, first of all, Duke, Kansas yesterday.
Tremendous.
Was 3 hours of total entertainment.
The greatest basketball game of the tournament. All right, hello and welcome. We're joined now by Fox NFL analyst Mark Schlereth and former NFL and Florida State star Danny Kanell. Let's start with Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah.
Whose future with the Giants could be in jeopardy. According to Ian Rappaport, Odell won't set foot on the field until he gets a new contract extension. Meanwhile, the New York Daily News is reporting that the Giants are open to trade offers that include at least a first-round pick for Odell. Cowherd, is Odell Beckham Jr. worth trading for?
Yes, depends on the situation. Baltimore, John Harbaugh almost got canned last year. They're chasing Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, 2 Pro Bowlers up front, Juju Smith-Schuster. They need a playmaker. San Francisco's chasing a Rams roster right now, and if they sign Ndamukong Suh with Aaron Donald, they'll have no running game. Listen, everybody's worth something in this league. A first-round pick. There's a lot of coaches out there that are on the hot seat a month in.
Look, I like the price tag, a first-round pick and something else.
Right.
They're not like the Eagles talking crazy about 2 first-round picks for Nick Foles. I like the price tag for the trade. But it's the price tag for Odell that I don't like. He wants to be the highest-paid player in the league. You're taking on that baggage as well. How long will Odell behave in a new environment, particularly if he doesn't get the kind of money that he wants? So I say no, he would not be on my trade board. I let that continue to be the Giants' problem.
Well, I would look at Odell Beckham Jr. You know, I've always believed, and I grew up in a franchise where under Joe Gibbs, it was always about, hey, we'll trade an unknown commodity, a draft pick for a known commodity, which is a great player. We'll do that all day long. So I grew up in that environment. That's how I cut my teeth in the National Football League. The issue that you get into with him is, you know, production versus problems. There's an equation, and when the problems outweigh the production, that's an issue. Coming off a broken ankle, I don't know what he's going to be. Now, if you can rent him for a year, let me see how he operates if I rent him for a year. Here's the crazy thing, though. Will there be partners? Will there be people reaching out to the Giants? You darn well know there will be a bunch of teams that reach out to him. Why? Because there's a lot of teams stupid enough to believe they're one wide receiver away from winning a world championship, right? That's a completely dependent position.
That's where
the wide receiver position, you've got to have a quarterback. You've got to have an O-line. You've got to have all those things to be.
Colin.
No, he's arguing Baltimore is delusional enough to think they're this close.
Okay.
And that is straight delusion, because how many franchises have ever been taken to a Super Bowl by a diva wide receiver?
None.
Sure, they've been parts of the puzzle, they've been pieces, but you've never built a team around a wide receiver. It's the position you don't do. It does feel like this is becoming almost more likely than not that he is going to get moved from New York. I feel like Dave Gettleman's come in there and he said, you know what, he moves JPP. He's kind of clearing some of the pieces out of the locker room because, hey, if you're a new general manager, what better time to do it than right when you walk in the door?
Yep.
And if I am him, I am taking those calls all day. But I would take Eli Manning, pull him aside, and said, what do you think we should do? How valuable is he to your career, to your success? Can we corral him in? You know, contracts aside, just from the straight locker room culture.
You had me till you brought up Eli.
Why is that?
Why do they care what Eli thinks?
Because he's the quarterback. That is
He's
the
at
position
the end
you
of his
build around.
career. He's part of the problem. I don't consult with him. Listen, the takeaway to me is, why is this story leaking right now? And why is the price tag a first-round pick and something else? They're throwing a trial balloon out there, and they're desperate to get rid of him. Because when you set the price that low, again, no one's going to jump over that. They're going to, oh, hell. You know, it doesn't take 2 first round. So let me offer a high top of the second-round pick and some, you know, starting player and see. The Giants want to get rid of Odell. They're not consulting with Eli. Hopefully they're drafting a quarterback and moving on.
Only 25, so we know. And his numbers with Eli were at times spectacular. Let's not go crazy here. Let's not marginalize him to pedestrian receiver.
No, he's a top receiver. He's
top 3, easy.
He's phenomenal. The record with or without, him, Eli Manning is 5-12.
Without Eli or without Odell?
Without Odell. Okay. Eli without Odell, 5-12. With him, 21-26. huge jump,
Right.
but still under 500.
That shows you the Giants have a lot of
So
issues.
these are always, and that's the thing. When you look at the Giants roster in totality, their offensive line stinks. Their running game stinks. Like, the other receivers are average. Their linebacking core is average. I mean, they've got other holes to fill. They've gotten rid of their best pass rusher in JPP. They've got some holes that they have to look at. And if you can get value for him and you can get picks for him, at this point, you want to reconstruct your roster, why not?
Danny, I want to ask you this, and we don't have a lot of time, but when I hear you all talk about Odell, I hear you all putting him in the same category as peak Randy Moss, and I just don't believe that. Randy Moss was a guy, everywhere he showed up, records fell, teams went 15-1, one team went 16-0, quarterback set records. Odell, to me, is not the same as Randy Moss, peak Randy Moss.
I agree with you. Randy Moss is arguably one of the best of all time.
Players.
I think Odell is one of the best in the league right now. I think you put him up there with Antonio Brown. You can compare him to him. They're very similar in what they do, the style with which they play. But it's not, I agree with you. Because Randy Moss, the guy I played with, he was at Florida State, best sheer athlete I've ever seen. And Odell Beckham is a freak, but he doesn't take over games the way Randy does from the physical nature standpoint, throwing it up for grabs. He's quicker and speed-wise. He can make huge plays, but I don't think he's a dominant.
All right, to Bill Belichick, who said over the weekend that he spoke to Malcolm Butler after benching him for the Super Bowl. How about that, Whitlock? But still declined to explain why Butler didn't play in the biggest game of the year. Today, Belichick's boss, Robert Kraft, owner of the Patriots, was also asked about the decision and had this to say. We try to encourage to have good managers and want them to be bold. We want them to take risks. Sometimes they work out. Sometimes they don't. There's no doubt in my mind, even if they made an error, and this is true with any of our managers, that if they're doing it for the right reason, then I support it 100%. Oh, Whitlock, you still think Robert Kraft supports Belichick 100%?
Yeah, I do think Robert Kraft supports him 100%. I don't think Tom Brady and the rest of the New England Patriots and Malcolm Butler and a bunch of other players around the league, I don't think they trust Belichick 100%. I think Robert Kraft has appropriately said, I got to judge the whole 18-year relationship, and it is marvelous. He's made a gigantic error here in the Super Bowl. I'm going to let it go. And he's saying that, hopefully he's trying to set a tone with Tom Brady and everybody else. Let's let it go. Our guy made a brain fart in the Super Bowl. Let's let it go. I don't blame Brady and the other players for not letting it go. Because if they had done something as stupid as what Belichick had done, he wouldn't let it go.
Well, Brady threw a pick six against Atlanta, so people make mistakes. They're human.
That's an in the moment. This guy had a 3-hour football game to figure out he had blown the damn Super Bowl by benching this kid. Brady makes a mistake in the moment.
Okay. You do get the Patriots' last 4 drives were touchdown, 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 driving for a touchdown fumble. Let's remember, this Super Bowl looked like all New England Super Bowls. Somebody else had it or they had it with 2 minutes left. Let's contextualize this
41 points, Nick Foles, looking like Roger Staubach.
Okay,
You got a DB that's won you Super Bowls sitting on the bench.
But this Patriots defense was not that great. It's not like this was an epically great defense that was shutting people down all year. And Nick Foles was slicing and dicing everybody throughout the playoffs, so it wasn't that unique. This is a situation to me. I think Bill Belichick did get cute. I don't think he should have benched him, but I don't think it was the end of the world. But I think it's interesting because I think Kraft supports Bill Belichick 100% as long as Brady does. And I think it's amazing how far we've come from the Guerrero scandal. Remember, it was like, oh my gosh, this Patriots dynasty is over. It's run its course. I firmly believe that once they kind of took a deep breath, stepped back, they would say, we have had this incredible run, and we would be crazy to give up on it now. And I think you're seeing a little bit of this is a little bit of kind of making up for some stuff that was said and kind of putting water under the bridge and moving forward from here as a group and as the dynasty that they've built.
Right, a little bit of rallying the troops. Everything's going to be okay here. And I look at this. Robert Kraft, of course he respects, of course he supports Bill Belichick 100% because, like you said, this 18-year run has been phenomenal. You don't have to like your coach. I'm sure there are probably plenty of things and idiosyncrasies about Bill Belichick that guys don't like. I guarantee you they respect his ability to coach. He always has them prepared, and you talk to anybody. Aqib Talib, I had a long conversation with Aqib Talib about Bill Belichick. I'd love to go back and play for Bill Belichick. The guy is incredibly intelligent. The guy always has us prepared, always has us ready to play. And there is no stone left unturned. There never seems to be a surprise. You know, that whole do your job and that whole, you know, the little things kind of mantra, that's what they respect about him. So the respect is there. You don't always have to like the guy that you play for. You damn well better respect him. And there's nobody that has more respect in this league than Bill Belichick as far as coaches are concerned.
I think for Belichick to operate the way that he has for the last 18 years, what has to be in place is the belief that Kraft is trying to restore. Everything that he does is about what's best for the team. And this broke that bond of trust. The Malcolm Butler decision, in my view, was not about what's best for the team. It was an explosion of Bill Belichick's ego, and it blew up in his face. And I think Bill Belichick's the greatest coach in NFL history. But his ego blew up in a way that, to me, undermines the trust. And the reason why Bob Kraft is coming out and making these statements, he's trying to restore that trust because he knows it's been shaken. If you coach the way that Belichick does, my way or the highway, we'll get rid of anybody if it's best for the team. You better live it yourself every day, and he didn't live it on a Super Bowl Sunday, and I don't blame Brady or anybody else on that team that's now looking at him with a side eye.
Why doesn't Belichick get an ego? Robert Kraft is 90. He's hanging out in Hollywood on the weekends. Brady's got a moat in one of his houses, or used to. It's okay. Belichick is, after 18 years, Phil Jackson didn't have an ego? Why doesn't the coach ever get one? The star gets one.
Because he tells his entire team, put your egos aside. And so, again, let's say I was a nutritionist. You don't get to go to In-N-Out Burger if you're a nutritionist. You got to live it because that's what you're preaching. His whole foundation is built on that. Put your egos aside, do your job, what's best for the team. And then also, but not me.
But how could this go back as far as the Guerrero stuff and everything else we talked about on this show? It's the first time I've ever felt like his authority, Bill Belichick's authority, was circumvented to some degree by the owner. We're going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. The Alex Guerrero stuff and all that. Is this in some way of like I think you're saying is Robert Kraft saying, wait a minute, you know what, this has been fractured to some degree.
Yes.
Yeah, that might have been a bad decision, you know, the whole Malcolm Butler deal, but let me give you back the authority and let me make sure my players understand that you are in charge.
That's not.
I think he makes a
Damage
great
control.
Yeah.
It's damage control.
But
They're trying to move on.
I think you make a great point, Mark, in terms of something may have triggered Belichick to make a mistake. Here's a guy we've seen walk the tightrope for 18 years and never fall off, and then did the Guerrero thing screw with his ego to the point, and maybe Kraft realized that it triggered his ego.
There was a lot of we talked about this. You
Tons
had
of noise.
the Guerrero
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
You had the ESPN piece. Bill's human. I mean, there's a lot of noise going on, and maybe he snapped, and he's just like, bad week of practice, guy's been sick, out. Listen, Tom's
He owes an apology.
to who?
To his team
Oh,
and to his
come
fan
on.
base. He owes an apology.
That is not
He
happening.
does.
Hey, you had a bad segment months ago. I never got an apology.
I don't have bad segments.
All right, welcome back. Danny Cannell is back. Great to have him. Also, Fox Sports reporter Bruce Feldman, our college football go-to guy. Let's move to Johnny Manziel, whose comeback push is in full swing. He threw for scouts at the University of San Diego's Pro Day last week as some people started comparing him to another quarterback who's no longer in the NFL, Colin Kaepernick. A comparison that Manziel actually says he's unworthy of, tweeting, quote, "This will probably cause an uproar, but I'm tired of the Kaepernick versus myself comparisons and angry. Cap is doing amazing things right now, changing lives, donating millions of dollars. His impact off the field from a societal standpoint is legendary and straight admirable." Whitlock, is it fair to compare Johnny Manziel to Colin Kaepernick?
No, and I think that it's a very lazy comparison being made by people that have very little to say about sports. And so, hey, let's play the race card. Johnny Manziel shows up at the University of San Diego's Pro Day and throws to their receivers or whatever. And then there's a comparison. Well, Cap had a workout in Houston that he didn't tell anybody about that wasn't organized or anything. It was just a guy throwing. And so there's no comparison here. They're not equivalent. Johnny Manziel's not suing the NFL. When you sue the NFL, it kind of hurts your value to other owners and teams. And so I don't think there's a comparison. Also, I don't think Kaepernick has been nearly as irresponsible in his personal life as Johnny Manziel. So I don't see how you tie these two guys together unless you have no talent and you're working in a sports media industry that requires you to say something, and so you play the race card.
I don't even think their football pedigrees match up. Kaepernick got to a Super Bowl, big, strong, good arm. Manziel, to me, has never been an NFL quarterback. I didn't like him before the draft. I think he's small shoulders, small hips. I don't think he can take the beating. I don't think he has the DNA to... Listen, Kaepernick showed up to work. I didn't always love the way he threw the ball. Everything was a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. Kaepernick's an NFL quarterback. Now, you may not want to sign him for reasons. Manziel, to me, is not an NFL quarterback. He can't show up to work.
No, you're 100% right. From a football standpoint either. I mean, he's a different thrower. He doesn't have the arm talent that Colin Kaepernick has, hadn't had any of the success that he's had either. I think it's incredibly dumb, lazy, and ignorant to try to lump these two in and compare them, saying, oh my goodness, Manziel's getting this opportunity. Johnny Manziel is a desperate, I don't want to say a human being, but a desperate quarterback. Like, he's an aspiring quarterback. He will sign with anybody. The first thing that's put on his table, all he wants to do is get that opportunity. Let me get into camp. He's going to these different pro days just to try to showcase his abilities. Colin Kaepernick has been sitting back from a very different perspective as a guy who's banked $40 million and is not in a desperate place where he wants to play quarterback. And that's the one thing Manziel is right about. He is doing things that he views as more important than the game. So he has other priorities. So I don't think it's fair at all to compare these two.
I would give Manziel at least a little credit for this. I think he was smart to try to diffuse this issue as it was bubbling up. I felt like it was more of a social media issue than it was anything else.
That's
but
our
I think,
society now.
Yeah, and I think
it was sparked on a television show.
Okay.
A television host on ESPN went after this narrative. Stupidly.
Okay, but then it got picked up because I started seeing a little bit on social media as well. And I think he was savvy to try to diffuse it and say what he said. But I think the reality is he threw there was a tight end and a receiver at San Diego, University of San Diego. Neither guy is probably going to get drafted. They're free agent guys. They had asked Johnny Manziel to throw. I think it was smart by them because that raised the visibility of the USD Pro Day.
Yeah.
Now, you know, I reported this a little before Colin's show this morning. Johnny is going to throw at Texas A&M. Now, all 32 teams were going to be there anyway. Christian Kirk is a legit guy, and there's a bunch of other guys there. I think he's smart to try to capitalize on that visibility, but the reality is we're talking about a guy who's just hoping to get down the road an OTA. I mean, he when I talked to him late last week, he said, this isn't my second chance, this is my 35th chance. I mean, there is the accountability issue with him is so far off the table right now. It's going to take a long time before anybody on the NFL gives him a chance, much less what we're talking about is like throwing the keys to him. I mean, we don't even know, as Colin said, we don't even know if he could actually play in the NFL.
Johnny wants to be a camp arm at this. He's that desperate. He wants a lottery ticket and hopes that it comes in. Again, everything we've heard from Colin Kaepernick basically wants a starting job or a high backup job and the contract that goes along with that. That's another reason why they're just not analogous. I'll give Manziel credit for being savvy enough to say, you know what? I'll go to Texas A&M's Pro Day. I'll go to San Diego. Because, again, I think these are things Kaepernick should be doing if he were around football people advising him rather than his girlfriend and Sean King and other people with no connection to football.
One other point that I think just should be made with Johnny. Johnny has his comeback season merchandise brand. It helps him to be out there and leverage this. Also, you know, when I talked to him the other day, he spoke about, you know, he's tried to get clean. He's tried to clean himself up. He's now taking medication for his bipolar disorder. Feels like, hey, if I don't ever get into the NFL and I'm clean and sober and happy, you know, I can live with that. But he also knows down the road, he'd like to be an ambassador for Texas A&M. You know, as Danny probably can attest to, the mania for Johnny Manziel around that fan base is off the charts. He brought in millions upon millions of dollars there. So I'm not saying Johnny Manziel would make more money than a starting NFL quarterback could, but he can make a really good living if he can keep himself clean and capitalize on that visibility of being around the program and giving them something to feel good about.
I might disagree with you that diffusing this was the best thing for Manziel to do. Like, I think there was definitely a social media aspect to it where this is basically, he's saying something that's going to get a lot of retweets, it's going to get a lot of exposure, and for him to basically go to bat for Kaepernick and put the cape on for him is incredibly popular for him to do from a social media standpoint, but I don't know if that's going to help his comeback that he desperately wants. So that's the only thing I would disagree. Like, if that's his sole focus, and I think you could have distanced yourself without giving the lengthy tweet that he put out there that basically said he thinks Kaepernick isn't signed because of the protest. I think he could have separated himself a little bit from that and still showed support for Kaepernick. Does that make sense?
It makes
it makes
a lot of sense.
That's why I would have said, man, I don't know if that was the smartest thing for him to put out.
I agree.
I think he was forced. Again, I don't know if you guys saw the commentary on ESPN that forced Johnny Manziel to have to do this. All right, welcome back. Danny Cannell and Bruce Feldman are back. Let's move to college hoops, where the Final Four is set with Kansas, Villanova, Michigan, and Cinderella Loyola Chicago all advancing. The most exciting game of the weekend was last night's thriller between Kansas and Duke, with redshirt sophomore Malik Newman leading the Jayhawks over a freshman-heavy Duke team. In fact, all the Final Four teams have more experienced players as their leading scorers in the tournament. Meanwhile, one-and-done teams like Duke and Kentucky both came up short. Cowherd, was this weekend and was this tournament proof that the one-and-done system doesn't really work that well?
No. So if Grayson Allen's shot goes in, we have a one-and-done power Duke, a team that doesn't get one-and-dones. Villanova has veterans. Loyola's the little guy. This tournament shows me that everything works. I mean, everything works. Kansas.
Last year there were no one-and-done.
Oh, good Lord. Duke is a Grayson Allen shot rolling in from having a one-and-done in.
Why can't we talk about what did happen rather than what didn't happen?
Well,
the
because
shot didn't fall. They went to overtime, and Kansas's veteran seniors and experience-laden team beat Duke. With all that pro talent.
Calipari's been to 4 Final Fours.
Listen, I get it, but I think that Villanova and Kansas has kind of fallen into this. They're going a different path. Okay, Duke, Kentucky, you guys want to go one and done? We're going to build around experience and 3- and 4-star kids who will be here for 3 or 4 years. And I actually think it's a better model, and it will work. That experience will take out. Duke had all those pros out there, Gary Trent, Bagley, Wendell Carter Jr.
Bill Self's not recruiting any of those kids.
No, he is.
Wiggins,
He
did he
just
go there?
fell
Yeah.
into. He just fell into it this year. I just don't think it's a coincidence what's going on with Villanova. I don't think it's a coincidence. Last year in the Final Four, there was one-and-done kid, the 6th man for Gonzaga. Again, it's the beginning of a trend.
No. By the way, what you're saying is basically, we had the one-and-done culture, and the coaches are modifying it.
Yes.
It's almost like Chip Kelly came in and Nick Saban said, there's some things I like about that offense. Not all of them. We still want to run the football. But your idea that, that talented Bagley kid, we'll pass on him. We'll take the 2-star kid.
Well, it worked all right when they had Jaleel Okafor and Justice Winslow, along with Grayson Allen, when they won the national championship against Wisconsin, who was the team who had guys that stayed there all year, their whole careers. I'm with you. I think it kind of comes and goes. And I think the reason that it works sometimes and it works doesn't is because in March Madness, anything can happen. It's a one-game situation. Right. College football is very much about talent acquisition. It's the sole reason you would win. Basketball, I think it's a big portion of it, but I think you also have to have those players cultivated in a very short window. I feel like the perfect mix is 1 or 2 one-and-dones, even just one kind of transcendent player surrounded with some role players who have been around, who know the system, who are familiar with the culture in the locker room, who can perpetuate throughout. That, to me, is what I would look for if I'm a coach. There's no way if you had the opportunity to have a one-and-done in your program, you wouldn't want him there. Like, you would pass on guys that said
if that was the case, you'd be celebrating Virginia for their model then. They don't have, like, the one-and-done talent. And look what it did to them in the first round.
Yeah, one-and-done was actually how many games they were in this.
You went to UMBC. That's an aberration. But, again, listen, I get your point. Are you going to want to play with Marvin Bagley and all, Gary Trent Jr. and all? And, look, next year Duke has the top 3 recruits all coming in. Don't be surprised if they don't make the Final Four next year and a Villanova, a Kansas' team is really a year ahead of schedule. Next year is when the Lawson guys come in. That's when they're really going to be terrific. I just think if you look at Bill Self's success during the regular season, Jay Wright's success during the regular season, having these experienced teams gives you regular season success and I think gives you the best. It's a better system than the one-and-done system.
I would rather coach your way, But to Danny's point, I'm not turning down Begley. But I do believe. I mean, Carolina won. Was it last year over Gonzaga?
Yes. And they were. Yeah, that's the.
No
Yes.
one and done kids.
But those are heavyweight recruits. They're not going after 3-star guys.
I'm not saying, but they're not one and done kids.
But
And I just think
they're still the same caliber of. We're talking about. There are guys who are going to be NBA players. If you're a 4-star guy or at that level as a recruit, you're a guy that they project to be an NBA player. Now, whether you project to be DeAndre Ayton is a different story, but they're still recruiting on a different level than a lot of like MAC schools. And
I get it, but again,
You
Duke
can't- it
and
doesn't have to
Kentucky,
be all or one- all one thing or all the
everybody's
other.
caught up in the recruiting classes. They got all, and I don't know if that's the way to judge these
what I would
teams.
want is I would want a one-and-done player who embraces the 1 year. Because there are a lot of guys that don't
You mean
embrace
Trae
it.
Young? Yeah, that's
No,
what you want.
but I'm like De'Aaron Fox. Like, I know they didn't win, but when they got bounced, he was torn up about it. He was crying on his press conference, as opposed to some guys who get up there and just say, hey, I'm announcing now that I'm going to the NBA. They could care less about playing at their programs. I want a one-and-done guy who wants to win.
Here's what I think Coach K is going to realize this offseason, and he may not admit it until later, is it like, damn, man, this should have been Grayson Allen's team. But instead, I brought in all these kids, and it wasn't my senior players' team. It was Bagley and all these other kids' team. And again, I think he's going to realize that was a mistake.
So you think he's going to punt on those 5-star
No,
guys who already committed?
I didn't say punt.
Go to North Carolina.
I'm going to say, particularly if next year doesn't work with the top 3 recruits, I think he's going to cut back a little
I'm going to go the opposite. I think Coach K is great with what he's doing. Now, I do think Calipari, on his porch with a glass of wine, may think, I could probably take a little of Villanova. Because that's what Roy Williams has done. Because John can still get the one and dones. I don't think Coach K is on the porch thinking, I'm passing on back. But I do think Calipari can say, the last 3 years, we have missed a real adult in the backcourt. Because when I watched Kentucky that year, I saw the talent. I didn't see like a veteran leader. The biggest upset of the weekend once again came courtesy of 11-seed Loyola Chicago. Really dominated Kansas State Saturday night thanks to some exciting wins and selfish style of play. And a 98-year-old nun named Sister Jean. The Ramblers have become the feel-good story of the tournament. Whitlock, do you think the run is good for college basketball?
Not really. If you're Sean McManus, he's already said it.
Who cares about Sean McManus? Nobody else is Sean McManus. That's the one TV executive.
He's paying billions for the tournament, and he's like, man, I'd rather have Kentucky or Duke or.
Well, that's his problem.
Look.
He's not the one who fills out brackets. He's not the one who's watching the opening weekend. You will remember. You
Sister
being
Jean.
the fans will
Sister
remember
Jean.
that story in Loyola, rather they're going to remember something else.
I'd rather remember Michael Jordan than Sister Jean. I'd rather remember.
Well, then you would have shut the TV off 30 years ago and forgot about
By
a
the
lot
way,
of other stuff.
Can I argue this, though? That Loyola of Chicago still sells the dream. A big part of this bracket is hope. Now, it's kind of delusional. I'll give you an example.
They'll be back next year, by the way. Continue.
Okay, do you remember Outback Steakhouse?
Yeah.
Okay, they have a bloomin' onion. Now, the steak is still why there's Outback Steakhouse. But it's okay to have this little gem, this little thing on the menu that gets talked about. Hey, you want to go in it?
So she's the bloomin' onion?
I would say Loyola is the bloomin' onion of the menu. It's still about Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, Villanova. But there's nothing wrong with having an appetizer that draws some people in.
And all those things, whether it's the Eric Musselman story at Nevada the first weekend, and you see a kid connection, you see something else, all those little flavors that make out the first 2 weeks.
Sister Jean, huh?
McManus. I don't have any problem with a network exec saying that he wants the one that's going to get the most eyeballs.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Kentucky.
He's a businessman too. But I think Mark Emmert should be doing backflips for this Final Four because you have the best of both worlds. You've got the Cinderella, you've got the Blue Bloods, and you've got Michigan. I don't know, you can call them just a powerhouse as a brand when you talk about blue, the Go Blue. But I think you have the perfect scenario for these 4 teams.
Also, don't you think the last month before this, when it was the March Madness run-up, all you heard about was FBI wiretaps, Sean Miller, and all this other stuff. And now we're talking about a 98-year-old nun and a program. The head coach came from the Rick Majerus tree and there's a real college-y feel to this.
Yes.
And I think this will bring people, this is the kind of thing that brings people back. Don't be so cynical. This is the kind of thing that brings people back every year for March Madness.
Buster Douglas has a place in boxing history. It's a tiny place, but when you name the 15 most memorable fighters, he's in there, and it matters. And for a night, for an hour, like Loyola's
Colin, the only player we know on Loyola is Sister Jean.
Right.
And she hasn't scored a point. She hasn't scored a point, and she's the star of the team. Again, I actually think Loyola is going to be a baby Butler University. I think they're going to be back next year. I think they'll have a better chance next year.
I'm getting a little Sister Jean fatigue. Just a little bit. Just a little Sister Jean fatigue.
I am? Because Sister Jean has inspired my mother. My mother thinks she should be on TV running her mouth about sports, too.
Bring her on.
But if you want superheroes, we got the NBA for that. For 3 weeks, we can embrace stories that are a little off the radar.
Yes. By the way, I don't want 2 Loyolas. I don't want 3. I can take 1.
Sister Jean, I love you. I'm just kidding.
We're joined now by NBA champ Steven Jackson, founder of the big lead Jason McIntyre. Let's move to the association. I must have been off that show. That made me laugh. Where the Warriors got some bad news this weekend. Steph Curry injuring his knee in his first game back after missing 6 games with an ankle injury. Oh, boy. Saturday, an MRI revealed Steph has a sprained MCL. Steve Kerr didn't sound too optimistic about the timetable for his return.
No, there's no way he's playing the first round. There's no way. I mean, he's being reevaluated in 3 weeks. So, so we got to be ready for to play without him, and then see how he's coming along.
Hopefully, I prove what Coach said wrong and put myself in a position to get back as soon as possible. But right now, who knows? Just try to do my job in the rehab process and get back as soon as I can.
All right, Whitlock, you trust KD now. KD to take the Warriors to the next level.
I think it's going to be tough. I think the Western Conference, there's a lot of good teams in the bottom half of that playoff seeding. I think any of those teams will be dangerous. And I've never saw KD as an alpha male. Again, he joined this superstar collection of players for a reason. He didn't want the responsibility of being that guy. And so, yeah, if I were the Warriors, I would be very concerned.
You and I totally agree on this. I've always seen KD as a more talented Dirk Nowitzki instead of LeBron. I
like Dirk.
Wow. Yeah. I like Dirk a lot too. What you think, who's better, Dirk or KD?
Dirk can score, but you can't. KD is 10 times.
Yeah.
Oh, come on now. Dirk,
no, I'm just saying.
Dirk was a hell of a player. Dirk.
He won a title by himself.
Yeah, you're right. And I was able to lock Dirk down a couple times. Facts. I never locked KD down. So you can't put them in the same category, man. You can't put Dirk and KD in the same category.
But KD's more talented, but I think Dirk's got a little more alpha in him.
I disagree.
Yeah. You remember all the veterans on that team with with Jason Kidd on that team, Tyson Chandler? They needed those veterans to take them over the hump.
You think KD's an alpha? You think he's a Kobe?
I think Dirk will back down before KD, easily.
All right, we've changed it, but do you think KD can carry this team?
Well, I definitely do. They 12-5 without Steph. We're not talking about NBA Finals. We're talking about first round without Steph. That's all we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So we got to keep that in mind. We're not talking about the whole playoffs. Steph will be back in the second round. Can KD beat a first-round team with the supporting cast?
Could be Minnesota.
Yes, he can. Jimmy Butler's not going to be as healthy as he would like to be going into the playoffs, but Minnesota's still a great team. I trust KD completely. 12-5 without KD, I think they can get to the first round.
We're forgetting 2
Steph.
years ago when they won 73 games. Curry got hurt in game 1 of the playoffs against the Rockets. Remember that? He slipped, injured his knee. He was out the rest of the series. They handled the Rockets 4-1. Klay Thompson averaged like 24 a game. They didn't have Curry at the beginning against Portland, the next series. Remember that? And Klay went off. He averaged 31 in the series. So if Klay can carry them, I'm certain that Klay and Kevin Durant, as long as Draymond stays out of trouble with the referees and the technicals, he's a key part to this as well.
I got to tell you something. The West is different. OKC's playing well.
But we're just talking about the first round.
Oh, I know, but you can
They can face any of them.
They're going to have Steph second round.
Yeah, by the way, have you guys seen OKC, Paul George, Carmelo? They're really struggling.
Hold on for a second. They could face any of these teams in the first round.
Right.
It's so stacked, those 6 teams, that it could be anybody. And I just think you guys are talking about the Warriors of the past. Even when Steph Curry got injured in that Rockets series, he was never the same the rest of the playoff series.
He was not. And they still got to the finals, game 7.
And by the way, let's say you don't have Steph first round, and you lose an opener. The pressure mounts. Like, one thing we know about KD, he's got rabbit ears. Okay, we know that. Steph doesn't. KD loses first round game. You don't know how it affects KD.
Oh, timeout. Do you guys remember when Curry was hurt this year and Kevin Durant was like an MVP candidate because he was playing so well without Curry? Let's not forget, this was the finals of the NBA Finals MVP. He was previously a league MVP. He's got Clay, Draymond. They're going to be okay. OKC's a little overvalued because Russell Westbrook's hot right now.
Has been poor in comparison to his previous play.
It's the regular season.
Again, he's been poor. And again, I think Golden State believes there's this switch that they're going to flip when the playoffs start. And habits are hard to break. And they've had bad habits all year.
Clay's hurt, too. Like everybody on this starting team has got a physical... This is not like KD leading a healthy Clay and they've got a great bench.
Or Steven, you were a player. Are they a little nicked up and they're like, hey, it's the end of the season. We got our playoff spot locked in. Let me just rest for a week. Or is that happening? We don't know that that's not.
They're not panicking. They're not worried. You go to the prom 2 years in a row, you win prom king. The third year, you ain't really tripping. Right? I done won it twice.
Well, that's a hypothetical.
If I move into your neighborhood, though, you're scared and concerned.
Not just my neighborhood.
If I move in, it becomes my neighborhood, and that's what the Houston Rockets and Chris Paul and them have done. They've moved into the neighborhood.
They've won the #1 seed. They're going to win the #1 seed. They're going to have home court. That's all they've done. They haven't won anything.
You still got to knock down Ali before you talk about
what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? Golden
State
are still the champions.
You're number 2. We agree on
I don't know about that.
Oklahoma City, where the Thunder lost a close one to Portland last night after Carmelo Anthony choked down the stretch, missing 2 wide-open threes, turning the ball over and missing another 3 to tie it at the buzzer. When asked about the performance, Billy Donovan said he still has confidence in Melo when the game is on the line. Colin, should the Thunder bench Melo?
What, so in the playoffs you trust Jeremy Graham?
Yeah.
Over Melo?
He's like 45 in basketball years. He's the oldest 34, 35-year-old NBA player I've ever seen.
They won 7 of 9. You're taking a bad weekend. You've gone to Vegas. You've had bad weekends.
Plenty.
I can't judge you on it. Carmelo had a lousy weekend, Friday, Sunday. Listen, I'm not even a Melo guy. I'll take him in the playoffs. He's their 3rd or 4th best player. Let's not screw this thing up, tick him off, and lose him. They got a shot, I'm telling you. They got a shot in the playoffs in the West now with the beat-up Warriors.
I've been saying that all year. They got a shot. I just think the biggest problem with him is he gets 3 post-ups a game, 6 threes. He has to be a post presence, especially in the playoffs. The game, and one thing about playoffs, the game slows completely down. They have 3 of the best one-on-one players in the league. This is why they're going to have success in the playoffs. But Melo, all those untimely threes, all those just erratic threes, he got to stop those and get more post-ups. His percentage will go up, and he'll be more efficient in offense. But they have to make it a point to get him the ball in the post, and that'll stop him from shooting all those wild threes.
Russell Westbrook doesn't want to do that. He wants the post cleared out so he can drive the lane.
Well, he has
so
to. He
what
has
the
to.
strategy, I would say, Steven, is play Melo with the second unit, which we've talked about before. Then post up all you want.
Right,
it's not
right.
You're not getting Russ's game thrown off. But again, he made a good point with the Jeremy Grant. You're going to trust Jeremy Grant, who's shooting like 27%
I'll go out with Melo.
Warriors won't even guard Jeremy Grant. Have any 3 you want.
I think he just said it all. They're going to go out with Melo. Because we know that's what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And again, they're going out. That's the key thing. I would rather take a chance and give someone else an opportunity, and again, just try to mix things up. Again, he can get more touches with the second unit. He can get touches wherever he wants with the second. Because one, if you put him down there in the low post, first of all, you're screwing up Steven Adams as well. It's not just Westbrook, because go look at the percentages when Adams gets a touch on offense, and particularly if he gets it anywhere down low.
It's all pick and rolls, though. You need somebody to drop the ball to in the playoffs. You have to have that to win in the playoffs. If you don't have that, you're going to struggle. You can't just shoot outside threes in the playoffs. You have to have somebody to drop the ball to. All successful teams have that.
But that was his problem in New York, Steven. Remember, he was a black hole in the post. He was a ball stopper in the offense. Everybody would just stand around. The defense could collapse and would kind of stop him. The problem with OKC is Russell Westbrook. He stopped shooting threes, as we've talked about. Mm-hmm. But now what is he doing besides driving? I mean, really, you got Paul George and Melo spotting up. How is that not working? It works for James Harden.
Right.
I don't understand why it's not working for Russ.
OKC is a flawed team. They don't shoot threes well.
Right.
But they've got what they have to do in the playoffs. Just be the best them. And the best Oklahoma City, if Golden State's banged up and Jimmy Butler's not, the best OKC, which is more 2 than 3s, could win 2 playoffs.
Wait a sec. They got swept by Portland, and they may face Portland in the series to open the playoffs.
You got to remember this, though. I always say this. Regular season, playoffs, and finals, that's 3 different levels of basketball.
Yep.
The games get tighter, and some of those guys that make those shots in regular season can't make them in the playoffs.
I still want to talk about your guys' game.
Take me through the final seconds of this game. Why didn't you guys foul?
What are you talking about?
Down the stretch there, the end of the game, the final seconds, 11 seconds left on the clock.
Do you think that the game came down to the final seconds of the game?
I'm asking you, though, why that decision in the final seconds of the game?
The game was over.
You didn't think your guys could get back in it, put them on the line if they miss those shots?
I mean, but 15 seconds, what were we down?
Put them on the line, they miss a few shots. Coach, a 4-point ball game. It's a question that the guys were asking at the end of our game. That's all I'm asking.
All right, welcome back. Time for last call. That was Florida State coach Leonard Hamilton there with CBS's Dana Jacobson. After his team lost to Michigan Saturday night, the coach later expressed regret for how he handled the interview. Cowherd, do you have an issue with how Hamilton handled that?
I don't think it's a big story either way, but if you're a college coach, you basically deal with a small local media all year. Maybe once a year, a big national reporter asks you a question that makes you a little uncomfortable. You make $6 million a year. Deal with it.
I think that he was caught off guard by the question. He clearly was expecting one thing and got something else. I don't have a problem with either side. If I were Dana, I would have asked the question second, given him a softball, then hit him with the tough question, but that's nitpicking. All right, to the Giants, who are reportedly fielding trade offers for Odell Beckham Jr., and now the New York Daily News reports that the Rams are pursuing the mega wide receiver. Cowherd, would L.A. be a good fit for your pal Odell?
No, the offense runs through Todd Gurley, and it always will, and it should. They're loaded at wide receiver and tight end. They don't.
Shocking me on this. I thought you'd love this.
No, this is PR. I keep saying this. The Rams like to be in these stories. I don't know if they want Ndamukong Suh or him, but they're selling PSLs right now.
I think they're going after Odell, and I think they're just taking on too much baggage. It's like they're playing a game of Madden. I don't understand. Seriously, I don't. Talib and Marcus Peters and everybody else.
How many targets could he get a game with the Rams? 8?
He'd want 12 probably. Hey, I want to congratulate the Warren Central Warriors, boys and girls, basketball state champions. Boys went 32-0. Greatest team since Oscar Robertson. Seriously.
Where, in Indianapolis?
In Indiana, yes.